We are going to get started in just 1 minute, so just be patient. We are just starting up our different platforms here. Okay. We will be with you shortly. Okay. We are a go here. We're a go there. And let's continue. Okay. Looks like everything is a go here. Just 1 second, and we'll get started. Okay. Okay, we are going to get started here. I think we've already started. All right, everybody, let's hit it. Bismillahi, alhamdulillahi, assalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Welcome, everybody from around the world. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem, and this is the BAK Show. We're going to be discussing the issues which are important to you. We are broadcasting live on YouTube. We are broadcasting on Telegram. We are broadcasting on X, formerly known as Twitter, and we're glad to have everybody here. Of course, I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we're going to get started here. Just want to let everybody know you can feel free to send in your questions or your comments. Today's show is about what's important to you around the Muslim world, and we're going to get started with that. But before we do, just want to put this out there about our project that we're working on. If you would like to support us financially, please do. I say that again. If you would like to support us financially, please do. You can go to our crowdfunding page where we've got a sensational project that we're working on, and it's called Voices of Truth. It's giving a voice to those people who were suffering under the reign of terror of Bashar al-Assad, and they never thought that they would have an opportunity to tell their story. But now they do have an opportunity, and we are doing short videos with them so that it can be documented exactly what took place during the reign of Bashar al-Assad. It's there on your screen. That's Medina.com/voices of truth. That's Medina with an H at the end, MADINAH.com/voices of truth. And you can help us out with $100, $50, $1, whatever you can do. It would be greatly appreciated. Okay, brothers and sisters, we're going to get started here. First of all, we've got Nick here, and he's saying, Assalamu alaikum, brother. And I'm saying back to you, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right. Okay, now let's see if we can get started. I want to get started with something. Last week, the last show that we broadcast on Thursday, we basically discussed the issue of the current administration here in Syria and the ties with Washington and how that affects or doesn't affect Tel Aviv and such like that. This is the reality that we have to look at when we're talking about Middle Eastern politics. Middle Eastern politics is just not complete unless you're talking about Israel, unless you're talking about how that all affects the Israelis. And there was an interesting comment that was made, and a couple of people made a similar comment. I'm going to kind of flash it right up here so that you can take a look at it. I'd like to address this. And it is as follows. It was a brief thing. It says, okay, now I can't find it. Okay, there it is. Okay, it says, no, Bilal, you cheered the downfall of the only guy who held Syria in one piece. You parroted the same rhetorics as CNN and BBC about the region. You were even happy about a former Al-Qaeda commander taking over power in Syria. Stop being a hypocrite. You are a part of the problem. All right, fair enough. You know, we don't mind to have these opposing viewpoints. That's what this is all about. So let's see if we can pick it apart and we can address it. First thing is that we cheered the downfall of the only guy who held Syria in one piece. Now, if you want to call that Syria was in one piece, the northeastern part of Syria was semi-autonomous. We're talking about the Kurdish regions, all the way down to the areas of Raqqa and Abu Hol. Those areas were dominated by Kurdish militia forces that were outside of the control of Damascus. The southern areas had their own semi-autonomy. So the first issue is that that Bashar al-Assad held the country together. Well, that just really wasn't the reality of the situation. That wasn't real. It was fake. In addition to that, you had the Iranians who held a big part of the country, even to the point where they were saying in the economic offices of the country were dominated by Iranians. So a lot of this rhetoric about Bashar al-Assad was holding the country together and such like that, it just wasn't real. It continues and it says, you parroted the same rhetorics as CNN and BBC about the region. Okay, I really wasn't caring what CNN and BBC were talking about in terms of the region. What I understood and what I cheered for and what I was happy for, to see Bashar al-Assad that starved and tortured to death his prisoners, economically strangled the country, bombed and killed how many countless hundreds of thousands of his own citizens. And you expect me to be sad that he's gone? I mean, really, is that really what you're saying? Or were you just sitting behind the keyboard and you just started typing away and just got carried away? Who wouldn't be sad? I'm going to tell it to you. Aside from his former inner circle, I don't know any Syrian who thought that Bashar al-Assad staying behind was a good idea. So I'm going to gamble here, but I don't gamble. But I'm going to say that I think that the person who wrote this, you're not in Syria, because that certainly is not a sentiment that Syrians share, that it would have been a good idea to keep him here, and he was holding things together. Holding a foot on the Syrian people's necks is what he was holding on to. And just to wrap it up, and it says, you were even happy about a former Al-Qaeda commander taking over power in Syria. Stop being a hypocrite. You are part of the problem. If you've been following over the time, people would know that I have not been, and I am not a cheerleader for Ahmed al-Shara, formerly known as Abu Muhammad Jolani. We have had many differences, most of them for Islamic reasons. And so if you've been following, then you would know that. The other issue is that, but am I happy that somebody other than Bashar al-Assad is there? I am happy about that. And I think 26 million other people are happy also, because they have an opportunity to see their families. And even though much of the country is destroyed, now the people who are from Homs or from Deir Zor or from Quneitra or from Dara or these other areas, they now have an opportunity to see their families. They didn't have an opportunity to do that under Bashar al-Assad, even though they came back to places which were destroyed. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because I thought that there were several comments that were alluding that keeping Bashar al-Assad was a good idea. And once again, I don't know any Syrians who say, oh man, the days of Bashar al-Assad were better than these days. Shoot. I don't know anybody who says that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We got Faisal here, and he says, Salam, brother Bilal. Always nice to see you, and always nice to see you too. Yeah, man, even though I don't see you, but it's nice to feel your presence there. Naam. Okay, next up, we got Rabul Yusuf, who says, Assalamu alaikum, Bilal. How is the situation of Suwaidat and the SDF? Bad. The situation in Suwaidat is as follows. The 95% of Suwaidat is controlled by a man called Hikmat Hijri. This Hikmat Hijri is a guy who is a militia leader and totally connected, backed, and funded by Tel Aviv. I'll say that again. Connected to, funded, and backed by Tel Aviv. In other words, Suwaidat is currently under the influence of Tel Aviv to the extent that Israeli flags fly in that southern area of Suwaidat, which is quite disappointing because the tribal forces came in, did a great job. I can't say it was the cleanest job because it wasn't an organized military force, but it was enough to force back the forces of Tel Aviv. But then it was taken over by the security services, and then it went back to the Hejri forces somehow. And that has yet to be clarified by the government in Damascus. As for the SDF, well, what the southern area of Suwaidat and the northeastern area of the Kurdish militia force regions, what they're looking for is a land corridor from the south to the north, basically connecting the two, which would give Tel Aviv a land corridor, provided they can take over Dara, which seems to be more of a low-hanging fruit at this point. And they would have a land corridor if they could establish it from the southern area of Suwaidat all the way up to the northern areas where the SDF are in control. So there's a lot that has to be watched. This is a fluid situation, and I think that the brothers and sisters need to stay tuned. Now, okay, next, Nick has something to say, and let's see what he's got to say here. All right, Nick says, brother, it feels like Muslims in the West need to take charge. It seems like the rest of the Muslim world are either too tribal, nationalistic, sectarian, and not that smart to lead the ummah. Let's pick that apart just a little bit because, okay, it feels that the Muslims in the West need to take charge. Let's take just that part right there, just that part. I would say that the Muslims in the West need to step up. I didn't say take charge. I said step up. And I do feel that very strongly because everybody's got to step up. We're getting our butts kicked in some areas, and we could really use a good helping hand from our brothers and sisters who are in the West. Okay, after having said that, let's go to the second part. It seems like the rest of the Muslim world are either too tribal. I'm sorry, y'all, but that's true. You know, it's too much. I'm Muwali, I'm Akadi, I'm this, I'm that, and all. It's a little too much, brothers and sisters. And I think that the influence of Western or foreign Muslims, maybe those are from Egypt, maybe they're from Saudi Arabia, but they don't have those tribal alliances. And I think that that is a really big plus, a big plus. Why? Because their influence is not based upon their tribe, their family. That also means that their disavowalment, their al-wala wal-bara, is not based upon something tribal or family-like, because they don't have any family here. But it's based upon the Quran and the Sunnah. And I think that we need to see more of that. I would be happy to see that. Now, I'm just kind of monitoring this right here. Okay. Okay. And then he continues. Nationalistic, same thing. I remember when I was in Egypt and all, and there would be a soccer match between one club and then some other club from out there, and the people would be going crazy and jumping all over each other. And if they lost, they get pissed off and they want to fight. And I was sitting there saying, brother, what you getting out of the deal? I mean, what's in it for you? What you gonna get? Nothing. Did you get a? Did you didn't have to? You didn't even get a free ticket. And so yeah, this nationalism thing is just wearing us out. It's wearing us out, brothers and sisters. It really is. Okay. Next, it says sectarian, yes, and not that smart to lead the ummah. No, there are some good brothers and sisters that are here, and they're doing some amazing work. And there are a lot of good brothers who can take charge and do some really amazing things. So that last part, I don't share that opinion. Now, let's go to the next one. We got the glorious lion in the house who says, Salaam alaikum, wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh. A couple of questions. First, do you believe that Syria is better off with autonomy in the minority provinces of Suwayda, Latakia, Hasaka? Also, second, what do you think of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries? Okay, first of all, do I think Syria is better off with autonomy in the minority provinces of Suwayda, Latakia, and Hasaka? No, I don't. Why would we be okay with the country being dissected along sectarian lines? I don't think that it needs to be that way. I think that the Kurdish people can find, with the proper governance, a good life here, right here in Syria. And I think that working together, we can repel a lot of enemies. But that's the issue, isn't it? Who are the enemies? Because necessarily the enemy of Damascus is not necessarily the enemy of Qamishli, which is in the capital in the northeast of the Kurdish militia force controlled areas. So all of that has to be taken into consideration. But no, I don't think that dissecting the country is a good idea for anybody. Now, what's more is that, I'm just going to give it to you straight, brothers and sisters. Look, Tel Aviv is using the Kurds. The Kurds want to have their own autonomous area. And you've got people like Netanyahu coming forward saying, I can hook that up. All right, there were so many who said, I can hook that up, going back just a few years ago, and then a few years before that, and a few years before that. And so the Kurdish people are the largest diaspora in the world without their own homeland. So I understand their desire to want to have their own autonomy. But I do think that that's not a step in the right direction. And I think that Syria is better off with them rather than a dissected country along sectarian lines, and Allah knows best. Also, second, what do you think of the Organization of Islamic Countries? I think it is a totally useless organization in the respect of its budgets and such like that. And let me try to explain that to you. Look, we've got all of these Organization of Islamic Countries. It's got so many different countries from Africa, the Middle East, and such like that. And on the real to real, and we just keep it the real deal, what have they done? They haven't done anything. Oh, wait a minute. Where's their main office at? Oh, it's in Riyadh. So it totally follows behind the foreign policy of Riyadh. If Riyadh says, nah, we ain't doing it, they say, nah, we ain't doing it. If Riyadh says, yeah, okay, we could do that, they say, yeah, we could do that. Okay, so, I mean, they do stuff like interfaith dialogue and inviting like some people to come to visit and see some masajid and things of this nature. But listen, y'all, with the Muslim world in flames, with a genocide happening in Gaza and all the other weirdo stuff that's happening around the Ummah, where are they? Who needs these big organizations and all where they sit and they take these pictures? But on the ground, it's zero, it's zilch, it's nothing, it's nada, it's yet. And I think that we didn't had enough of these people. We had enough of these organizations that aren't delivering for, any impact on the ground for the people. And I said it, and I know some people are not going to like it, but I'm just being real with you. They're not delivering anything tangible on the ground. And if you're not delivering anything tangible on the ground, then I'm starting to question, what that was, what it's really all about. NAS94 is saying, why are news outlets now reporting that ISIS' new HQ is in the mountains of northern Somalia? Probably because it's an Islamic movement and it serves certain interests to call it an ISIS movement. I have nothing to verify that these fighters are ISIS, except some media outlets. I have nothing. I've seen some videos and all this, like new ISIS video, dum 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 dum, and it's got some nasheed in the background, but I don't hear nobody talking about, yo, we're part of the Islamic State and so on and so forth. No, that's the commentary that's said over it. I'm not saying that they aren't. I'm just saying that I have no reason to believe that they are. Okay. All right, and let's take the next one. Nick says, the Western Muslims from the UK and America that live in Syria, are they united and work together? In the general sense, yeah, they do work together. And they are able to come together to solve problems. They fight on the same battlefields. They do ribat, guard duty in the same frontiers, and also, yeah, they do. Of course, everybody has their squabbles sometime, and I don't think it's an American a squabble or a British squabble, but sometimes you just have Ahmed and Mustafa, and Ahmed says, hey, Mustafa, man, that ain't right. Mustafa said, oh, well, you know what? Shut up. And then you've got a shouting match. But do the brothers work together? Yeah, they do. Do they get along? Yeah, they do. So yeah. Next. It says, it seems like Dawla was somewhat right about Jolani, and that's probably why Hurasaddin did a split from him. I don't know if I'm going to say that Dawla was right about Jolani, because, I mean, there are a lot of people who had their suspicions about Jolani, but I sure got my suspicions about Dawla. So I don't know if I can sit here in good conscience, kind of attribute this to Dawla, that, yeah, they were right. I don't know what they were right about. You know, they might have been right in the respect that maybe they can't, they felt they couldn't trust Jolani and such like that and all, that might be the case. But to sit here and then say, oh, they were right, but then it'll conjure up other ideas like, okay, what else were they right about? And I don't think they were right about a lot of things. And Allah knows best. Next up, Ammar Naam says, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Is your view still the same in terms of how Al-Shara should be reacting to Israeli plans? Okay, I will update you in terms of what my view is. The first thing is that, look, we have to be honest with each other. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Syrian army can go toe to toe with the Israelis. I'm not going to pretend that. But also, I'm not going to pretend something else, that we can give territory away, in this fashion, because I understand the Israelis. Because Israeli politics and politics in Washington are one and the same. So I think I have a lot more experience than other people in terms of how to deal with or where these Western policies are coming from. After having said that, I would say that the Israelis are not going to stop. I mean, brothers and sisters, let's talk business for a second here. Netanyahu's talking about a greater greater Israel, and it includes Syria. It's on the map. He ain't trying to hide it. He's putting it out there. You see what I'm saying? And they're taking over territory. They're doing it in Quneitra. They've taken over Suwaydat, which is a big land expanse in southern Syria. They declared that they don't want to have any government troops in Daraa, which is on their border. That too has been followed. And also, we may be looking at any time that all of southern Syria, south of the countryside of Damascus, is gone. And that could happen at any day. That's the reality of the situation. Now, they're talking about, we want to be cool with the SDF that's up in the north and all. Ooh, now that's another issue right there. You see, I'm saying that the Israelis/Americans are not going to stop unless you show them something. I'm going to say this again. They're not going to stop unless you show them something. Now, I don't care if you got a rock, you got a stick, an angry dog, or an attack cat. But the reality of the situation is that they will continue to take more territory. Being cool with the Americans is not going to call off the Israelis. Why? Because the Americans and the Israelis are making the same policies in the same rooms. They just play the good cop, bad cop. For example, Thomas Barak made a statement, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. That's the envoy to the Middle East. That's, in other words, Donald Trump's boy, next to Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, that's basically carrying out his policies in the region. And he said, we've spoken to Netanyahu about carrying out these airstrikes in Syria. We've spoken to him about it. Okay, come on, y'all. Let's be for real. Issue number one. Where were you? Hello? They've been carrying out airstrikes since December the 9th. And now you talking to them about, oh, guys, no, this is not right. I don't think this is a good idea. It's counterproductive. Okay, where were you? You see, this is the type of silliness that I hope that old boy down in Damascus is not falling for, because they're only doing that. They're only giving Ahmed al-Shara economic concessions and pat on the back and a pat here and there and everything, just to keep him drunk and just to keep him dependent on them. And then they'll go right into the next meeting with the Israelis and say, put the screws on him. That's American foreign policy. They will not tolerate under any circumstances whatsoever a strong and empowered Ahmed Shara on their borders. Forget it. It's not going to happen, brothers and sisters, no matter what they say, because any Muslim country that sees what the Israelis are doing, at any time that they gained a level of strength, they will attack Israel. Full stop. The Americans know that. And so do the people in Tel Aviv. So what they do is they shape all of their policies around one thing: security for Israel, i.e. a weak and dismembered Syria. Now, we just got finished talking about dismembering Syria. You've got the Kurdish militia forces in the north. That's outside the control of Damascus. You've got in the south, the Suwaydat and their province in Quneitra and such like that. That's the type of dissecting of Syria that the Israelis/Americans want/need in order to keep Syria weak and to keep Ahmed al-Shara dependent on them. They need that like a mama needs, or like a baby needs milk from the mother. They shape all of their policies around that dynamic. I am just my battery is about to run out, so I'm going to just replace the battery. If you'll give me just a brief second. Hold on one second. All right. Okay, so I hope that's clear, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, next up, we've got the glorious lion here, who says, one last thing, is democracy through ethnic groups halal? I feel that minorities can best be represented through it without resorting to violence. I don't think that you mean democracy. I think what you mean are elections, and elections and democracy are not one and the same. Because elections is a form of shura or consultation that is halal. There's nothing to prevent that. However, democracy, by definition, meaning rule of the people, that means that the people can legislate that which is allowed and that which is not allowed. And that's only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, they may get together and say, hey, you know what? We want to do a referendum to open up a casino in a Muslim country. Well, we ain't have no referendum for that, because that's inherently haram. And somebody says, oh, wait a minute, this is a democracy. And if the people decide that there's going to be a casino, then it's going to bring in revenue. It's going to bring alcohol too, but at least the people have some jobs. Okay, that's where the problem lies, because in a democratic environment, that goes. If the people say that we want to vote, that we want to have a Trump casino or something like that, in the middle of Damascus, then we could do that. That's under democracy, and we ain't having that. Now, doing elections, that doesn't take anything away from the fact that the legislator is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those laws which contradict the Quran and Sunnah are not even voted on, not even considered, and not even brought to the table. So I think that maybe if that nuance maybe changes your question a little bit. But Glorious Lion, if I didn't get it right, you can let me know before we go off air. Okay. Next, Mr. Ibik says, does the fall of Assad in Syria result in the rise of Israel in Syria? You have to understand something, that the Israelis are a country that was waiting for an opportunity to flex its muscles in a weakened Syria. And they did that. Now, does that mean that holding on to Bashar al-Assad was the answer to the problems? Absolutely, positively was not. No way, no how. Bashar al-Assad never fired a shot at Israel. Bashar al-Assad was not a friend to the Palestinian cause. It was only billed as that because the Iranians were in town. Bashar al-Assad couldn't survive without the Iranians. The Iranians killed hundreds of thousands of Syrians. So keeping a guy like that on board was not exactly an idea that the Syrian people were interested in. Okay, so does the fall of Assad in Syria result in the rise of Israel in Syria? To some extent, yes. But it also means that the people have an opportunity to take back their country. They didn't have an opportunity to do that under Bashar al-Assad. But I'm not going to pretend that there isn't more of an Israeli influence inside of the country, because there is. But I also think that that if the people stay engaged, there can be some real pushback. Now, okay, next up, we've got, and I want to do some rapid fire here. I heard Syria wants to build the army with the help of Turkey. Are they preparing to defend the country? The Turks want to help build up the Syrian army, and so they have signed on to train them. That's the first thing. But you also have to understand that the Turkish government backed rebel forces for throughout the revolution. Now that's huge because the interests of Ankara are very closely tied to the interests of Damascus. To see an Israeli-backed, empowered, juiced up Kurdish militia force on the Turkish border is something that Ankara is not going to go for. And Allah knows best, but I don't see that happening at all. The Turks, I believe, Allah knows best, within a year will be at war with those Kurdish militia forces, and so will the Syrian troops loyal to Ahmed al-Shara, and Allah knows best. I don't like war. I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm seeing signs of it, and Allah knows best. Okay, next up. Hello from Spain, dear Bilal. Walaikum salam. Good to see you, man, or hear from you. I keep seeing daily reports of attacks by Daesh in Deir ez-Zor, Mayadeen area. What's the situation of Daesh in eastern Syria? Okay. Okay. First thing is that I don't hear a lot of attacks taking place inside of Deir ez-Zor and Mayadeen. There are sometimes attacks in the far outskirts, in the desert areas and such like that. But these are attacks that I cannot verify. I don't know who them folks are, to be honest with you. And I think that one of the things that keeps the American presence legitimized is to fan the flames that, watch out, ISIS is hiding behind the garbage can. Watch out, ISIS wants to eat your kids. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they're not there, but I can tell you that they are there. And I go to all of the population centers, and I'm not feeling that ISIS presence, brothers and sisters. You know, you had the U.S. Special Forces allied along with forces loyal to Ahmed al-Shara, pulling off an attack in Al-Bab area about a month ago, and then just a week ago in Utma, Syria, and all. These attacks have got to stop, these joint attacks and all. And then they build it up that, oh, yeah, it was some ISIS fight or something like that and everything. So go get Ahmed Shara's boys to go get him. Why are we allowing the Americans, who are carrying out a genocide just some kilometers away, to bring their forces and just run a wreck shop? I don't understand where that's coming from, brothers and sisters. And I do think that the Syrian people should demand some more answers, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay, next, Sam says, do you recommend Western students of knowledge come study in Syria? If so, which university and institutes do you recommend? No, I don't recommend that. There are other places with much stronger study and teaching and learning. So no, I wouldn't recommend that. No. Okay, let's see. Okay, important question. Faisal says, Brother Bilal, are there Sunni groups in Syria who are willing to challenge Ash-Shara and fully implement Islam in Syria and challenge Israel? Again, I've gotten this question before, but I don't think that that's the right question, because the Sunni groups that are here are, nobody wants another internal struggle. Even though things don't look like they're going in the proper direction. And nobody's thinking that the answer to that is to start firing on other Muslims. So I think that maybe the question isn't the question that we need to be asking. I think that there's another question that needs to be asked in terms of how can these Sunni groups pressure the government of Ahmed al-Shara to do more along the lines of what was promised in terms of Islamic rule. because just to now say I'm turning my weapons on other Muslims, that's not the answer to our problems. And I think that the brothers here know and understand that. Okay, let's take one more. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Mr. Kurdi is in town, and he says, Mr. Bilal, as always, looking handsome. Jazakallah khair. Do you think the new government is even able to provide resources and services for a whole unified Syria? For a whole unified Syria? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are enough resources to pull from, and I do think that they could manage that in a unified Syria. In a unified Syria. Now, all right. So I think that we're going to leave that there. Okay. Okay. Anonymous says, and well, maybe this will be the last one. Salam, brother. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Why do you suppose the Syrian government is completely silent on the atrocities by Israel in Palestine? No one sincere expects them to go to war, but why the utter silence? America. Is that clear enough? America. America has a big influence on Damascus, and that's why. I don't think it's more complicated than that. Anybody think it's more complicated? I don't. And Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows best. Yeah, I hate to leave it on such a negative note, but that's just the reality of the situation. This is why I say, look, some people jump up and they'll say, look, Bilal, the country needs money. The country needs to get back on its feet. And if the Americans are going to help us to do that, then why shouldn't we be engaging with them? Now, I'm not saying not to engage with them. I'm not saying not to engage with them. I'm not saying not to engage with them. 3 times I said it for clarity. But what I am saying is that they're not going to help you get back on your feet. This is what you've got to understand. It is totally anathema to think that Washington is going to help Syria get strong on Israel's border. Period. You can't shape your politics off of that which is not real. It's not real to expect that Washington is going to help Syria get back on its feet. They're not. But then they say, okay, well, but what about the sanctions and all? Okay, the Taliban's economy is thriving, and they have every sanction that Washington put on them is still there. And they're still doing a business. They're still growing. They're still thriving. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is helping them. So I think that this is a bit of a myth that if you don't deal with America, then you'll lose everything. I think that dealing with America, it's designed for you to lose everything. That's because they're designing it that way. And they're doing this good cop, bad cop thing with Tel Aviv. As we mentioned, Thomas Barak talking about, okay, well, we asked Tel Aviv, we addressed the situation of the bombings in Syria when you already knew what was going on as soon as they launched the first missile on December the 9th. But now you need to talk to them. Or I called Netanyahu, he'd answer the phone. I don't know where he's at. Oh, then somebody answered the phone. I don't know who that was. I'm going to call him back tomorrow and see. Guys, this is kids stuff. They know what them jokers are doing. They're doing it because the Trump administration is cool with it. And Allah knows best. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Before we go, gotta just ask you, if you could please help us out. Take a look at our crowdfunding page for our project that we're working on. We've got Medina.com/Voices of Truth. That's Medina with an H, MADINAH.com/Voices of Truth. I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we would be appreciative of anything that you could give to us to help us to bring a voice to the voiceless. Jazakum Allah khair. Assalamu alaikum.